That wasn't even recording. Hi, thank you, and welcome to my channel. It's Mother's Day, so we're going to do a Mother's Day segment. I'm just going to call it a segment because it sounds better than special. This is a school shooting slash matricide, I think is what they're called. Yeah. I was going to do Killer Moms, but I've already covered most of them, so we're here now. On May 21st, 1998, 15-year-old freshman student Kip Kinkle opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle in the cafeteria of Thurston High School in Springfield, Oregon, killing 2 of his classmates and wounding 25 others. The day before, he killed his parents at the family home, following his suspension pending an expulsion hearing after he admitted to school officials that he was keeping a stolen handgun in his locker. Fellow students subdued him, leading to his arrest. He later characterized his actions as an attempt to get others to kill him, since he wanted to take his own life after killing his parents but could not bring himself to do so. During the year before the shooting, Kinkle displayed increasingly aberrant behavior and a heightened fascination with weapons and death. They usually do, leading his parents to take him to a psychologist who diagnosed Kinkle with major depressive disorder. For the record, not everybody with major depressive disorder goes on to kill their parents and shoot their classmates. Kinkle's parents had not disclosed any histories of mental illness in their families, and Kinkle himself had not told anyone about having heard voices urging him to violence since he was 12, out of fear of being ostracized or institutionalized. I get that because I've done stays in the psych ward, and they're not all great, and they do help to an extent, but they're not all there to help, if you get my point. After the shooting, Kinkle pled guilty to murder and attempted murder and was sentenced to 111 years in prison without the possibility of parole, a sentence upheld on appeal. He was additionally diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and began taking antipsychotic medication. He is currently incarcerated at Oregon State Correctional Institution in Salem, and he will be there for the rest of his life. The shooting made national news as the latest in a series of school shootings over the previous year. Kinkle's was seen as more egregious than the earlier ones before, since he had gone into a crowded internal space and indiscriminately opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle. So, like, Columbine, they were focused on, the popular kids and the jocks, even though they really just killed to get their number up. But this is just kind of like indiscriminate. He didn't have a set target. He wasn't after his bullies. He wasn't after a certain kind of person. It was just whoever was available. And of course, he chose the cafeteria because it had the most people in it. President Bill Clinton spoke at the high school a month later about the issue. A memorial outside the school memorializes the 2 students killed. Kipland Philip Kinkle, known as Kip from this point forward, is the second child of William and Faith Kinkle. His parents were both Spanish teachers. Faith taught Spanish at Springfield High School, and William had taught at Thurston High School and Lane Community College. William had retired 3 years before the shooting, while Faith was still working. There was a history of serious mental illnesses in both sides of the family. Faith and William concealed this from psychologists. Investigators hired by Kip's lawyers uncovered it, including one uncle who had stabbed a state trooper after a traffic stop in the late 1940s, believing the man had killed his brother during the war. Now, I don't know if that's psychosis. To me, that also sounds like maybe like PTSD, like if he served in the war, maybe he was having like a flashback or something. I don't know, but they're pretty set that it's mental illness, so I'm not really sure about that. I couldn't really find much on the uncle because I didn't have his name, so. According to all accounts, Kinkle's parents were loving and supportive. His older sister, Kristen, was a gifted student. The family spent a sabbatical year in Spain when Kip was 6, where he attended a Spanish-speaking kindergarten. Kip reportedly attended in an unnormal way, and his family said that he struggled with the curriculum. When he returned to Oregon, he attended elementary school in the small community of Walterville, about 5 miles east of Springfield. His teachers considered his immature and lacking physical and emotional development. Based on the recommendation of his teachers, Kip's parents had him repeat the 1st grade. It's not uncommon. During that year, he was diagnosed with dyslexia, which became worse, and placed in extensive special education classes by the beginning of 2nd grade. Kip had an interest in firearms and explosives from an early age that grew in puberty. He began making bombs, mostly gasoline-based, and detonating them in a nearby quarry to assuage his anger. William initially wanted to discourage his son from violence, but later enrolled Kip in a gun safety course, because that's what we should have done. Buying him a 9mm Glock handgun, and eventually a .22 caliber rifle at the age of 15. Sorry. Probably not the best choice, considering those weapons were later used to kill you. He also passed down a .22 single-shot rifle he had received at age 12 to his son. Faith initially disapproved of the purchases, but relented when his psychologist gave her emotional permission to say yes. Well, he's clearly not good at his job. Kip and William used the guns for target shooting near their homes. Classmates at Thurston described Kinkle as strange and morbid. Others characterized him as psychotic or schizoid, which, I mean, you know, fits, considering his later diagnosis. Enjoying the music of rock bands such as Nine Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine, and Marilyn Manson. And for the record, I'm going to say I like Rage Against the Machine. I don't think that makes you crazy. He constantly talked about committing acts of violence, telling friends that he wanted to join the U.S. Army after graduation to find out what it was like to kill someone. So this is not the first time I've heard this, because I was literally just watching a TV show this morning where the guy was like, he wanted to join the Army because it would basically give him a license to kill anybody and everybody. And I'm like, that's not how that works. But that's why he wanted to join the Army. And I'm like, okay, cool. Okay. When asked about a family trip to Disneyland, he commented that he wanted to, quote, punch Mickey Mouse in the nose, end quote. He once gave a how-to speech in bomb making to his speech class, and a set of stink bombs in the lockers of his, and set off stink bombs in the lockers of classmates. That sounds a little bit like the stink bomb sounds like a kid, but how-to speech on making bombs. So many red flags that were ignored. Kinkle studied William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet in his English class and related with the protagonist, and became enamored with the 1996 modernized film adaptation, which featured heavy use of firearms. Kip's parents enrolled him in anger management and had him evaluated by a psychologist, Jeffrey Hicks. Kinkle saw the psychologist over a period of 6 months. He was diagnosed with depression and began a prescription for Prozac. I take Prozac, and honestly, it does help, and it is a good medication. Fully support that. I just think he maybe needed something to kind of go hand in hand with the Prozac, and not just the Prozac itself, if that makes sense. 8 weeks later, Kip, his mother, and Hicks agreed that Kinkle was doing well enough to stop the sessions. Don't do that. However, Kip did not refill his Prozac prescription when it ran out in late 1997. And that's why he should not have done that. Because when you end the sessions, it no longer forces the person that's enrolled in getting help to continue taking the medication that they need to take. By regularly seeing somebody in the psychiatric field, it does kind of put a little bit more pressure on them to actually, you know, continue to take the medication and whatnot. That's my personal opinion anyway. Eventually, Kinkle began to have paranoid delusions, believing that the government had implanted a computer chip in his brain, and that the Chinese government was going to invade the West Coast. He described 3 voices that were in his head. Voice A, who commanded Kinkle to commit violent acts. Voice B, who repeated insulting and depressive statements at Kip's expense. And Voice C, who constantly echoed what A and B said. He claimed he felt angry at God for being subjected to these voices, to the extent that he believed in God, and that it was Voice A who instigated the killing of his parents and the subsequent attack at the school. On May 20th, 1998, Kinkle was suspended after being found in possession of a loaded stolen handgun on school grounds. A friend of Kinkle's had stolen the pistol from the father of another friend and arranged to sell the weapon, a Beretta Model 90.32 caliber pistol, to Kinkle the night before for $110. Kinkle then put the gun, loaded with a round magazine, in a paper bag and left it in his locker. When the gun's owner discovered the theft, he reported it to the police and supplied the names of students he believed might have stolen the firearm. Kinkle was not one of them. The school became aware of his possible involvement and questioned him when he was checked for weapons. He reportedly stated, "Look, I'm going to be square with you. The gun's in my locker. Kinkle was suspended pending an expulsion hearing, and he and the friend were arrested, which makes sense. Theft, you know. Kinkle was released from police custody and driven home by his father, who told him he would be sent to military school if he did not improve his behavior. This probably did not help the psychotic delusions, and in his mind he's thinking, well, if I'm going to get in trouble, might as well get in trouble all the way, I guess. I don't know. But, yeah. When his father lectured him while driving him home from the police station after the firearm incident, Kinkle said the voices in his head were so loud that he was unable to hear his father. Shortly before his death, William confided to a friend that he was terrified and had run out of options to help his son. According to Kinkle's taped confession, at about 3 p.m. that day, he retrieved his Ruger .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle from his bedroom and ammunition from his parents' bedroom. He then went to the kitchen and shot his father once in the back of the head before dragging his body into the bathroom and covering it with a sheet. When his mother arrived home at 6:30 p.m., he met her in the garage, told her he loved her, then shot her 6 times. Twice in the back of the head, 3 times in the face, and once in the heart. He then dragged her body across the floor and covered it with a sheet. Throughout the next morning, Kinkle repeatedly played a recording of Liebestod, the final dramatic aria from Wagner's opera Tristan and Isolde, on the family's sound system. The recording was featured in Romeo and Juliet and included in a soundtrack release for the film. When police arrived at the home, they found this opera music from the soundtrack playing loudly with the CD player set to continuous play. And a note Kinkle left on a coffee table in the living room, he described his motive for killing his parents as, quote, I just got 2 felonies on my record. My parents can't take that. It would destroy them. The embarrassment would be too much for them. They couldn't live with themselves, end quote. But as the note continues, he attempts to describe his mental state with, quote, my head just doesn't work right. God damn these voices inside my head. I have to kill people. I don't know why. I have no other choice. End quote. So originally when I was reading this, I thought he was talking about the 2 felonies being that he killed his parents. So I was like, why? Because, you know, you didn't have those felonies until you killed your parents. But I think it was the theft and the bringing a firearm to school that he might be talking about. Because I don't know how much guns are worth. I don't own a gun. I don't want to own a gun. But it could be grand larceny, which would be, you know, a felony. I'm not really sure if it was the murders that he committed that's the felony, or if it was the theft that he committed was the felony. But if it was the murders, then in that process, my brain was like, but you didn't commit the felonies until you killed them. So if you had not killed them, then you wouldn't have committed a felony. So I don't know, it doesn't add up to me, but then again, I'm not him, and I don't have the voices in my head that may have made this sound reasonable to him. I don't know. On May 21st, Kinkle drove his mother's Ford Explorer to the high school. He wore a trench coat. Why do they always wear a trench coat? To hide the 5 weapons he carried. 2 hunting knives, his rifle, a 9x19 Glock 19 pistol, and a .22 caliber Ruger MK11 pistol. He was carrying 1,127 rounds of ammunition. Kinkle parked on 61st Street, 2 blocks from the school, then jogged to the campus, entered the patio area, and fired 2 shots, fatally wounding 16-year-old Ben Walker and wounding another. He went to the cafeteria after turning down the hallway and walking across it, fired the remaining 48 rounds from his white rifle, wounding 24 students and killing 17-year-old Michael Nicholson. Might be McHale. Kinkle fired a total of 51 rounds, 37 of which struck students and killed 2. 300 students were present during the event. When Kinkle's rifle ran out of ammunition and he began to reload, wounded student Jacob Riker tackled him, assisted by several other students. Kinkle drew the Glock from his belt and fired 1 shot before he was disarmed, injuring Riker again, as well as another student. He yelled at the students, "Just kill me," and the students restrained Kinkle until the police arrived and arrested him. A total of 7 students were involved in subduing and disarming Kinkle. In custody, Kinkle retrieved a knife that was secured on his leg and attacked a police officer, begging to be fatally shot. The officer subdued him with pepper spray. Nicholson died at the scene. Walker died after being transported to the hospital and kept on life support until his parents arrived. The other students, including Riker, were also taken to the hospital with a variety of wounds. Riker had a perforated lung, but he made a full recovery. He received the Boy Scouts of America Honor Medal with crossed palms for his heroism on the day of the attack. In the wake of the shooting, over 200 counselors volunteered, and over $400,000 of aid money was given in the form of the Thurston Healing Fund. A scholarship was created for school graduates in remembrance of the shooting, and in 2003, a permanent memorial was created and dedicated at the school in memory of the event. It has a curved wall and a plaque with the names of the students killed. Plans also to include Kinkle's parents were dropped after debate. Now, I would have said, if it was Kinkle himself, that they absolutely should not have put his name on there, but the parents really didn't do anything. They weren't aware that this was going to happen, and they were his first victims. So I feel a little differently about the parents in this case, because they didn't know. But I also kind of, like, understand it. It's sad, whatever way you put it. A total of 4 people lost their lives, regardless of who they are. At the police station, Kinkle lunged at Officer Al Worthen with his knife, screaming, "Shoot me, kill me." The officer repelled Kinkle with pepper spray. Kinkle later said he wanted to trick the officer into shooting him, as he had wanted to kill himself after killing his parents, but could not. In jail, Kinkle was placed on suicide watch. He attempted to kill himself by starvation, but stopped once his sister Kristen began visiting him. He did not resume attempts when she had to leave the state to finish her undergraduate degree, because he didn't want her to have to fly right back to Springfield again. At his sentencing, the defense presented experts on mental health to show that Kinkle was mentally ill, which I do not argue. Hicks said that he was in satisfactory mental health. He had seen Kinkle for 9 sessions and treated him for major depression. William and Faith terminated the therapy because Kinkle was responding well to treatment and ceased to show symptoms of depression. On September 24th, 1999, 3 days before jury selection was set to begin, Kinkle pleaded guilty to murder and attempted murder, foregoing the possibility of being acquitted by reason of insanity. In November 1999, Kinkle was sentenced to more than 111 years in prison without the possibility of parole. At the sentencing, Kinkle apologized to the court both for the murder of his parents and for the shooting spree. In June 2007, Kinkle sought a new trial, saying that his previous attorney should have taken the case to trial and used the insanity defense. And here, I don't really blame the attorneys, because he was told that they could do that, and he chose to plead guilty. So I don't really see that as being a valid argument, because they were trying to do that, and he was like, "Nah, it's good. I'll just plead guilty, whatever. It doesn't matter." Like, I get that people change their minds, but, like, you should probably change your mind before you pleaded guilty. I'm just saying, like, they did their job. They tried to do their job, and he didn't let them. He continues to seek parole, although it is considered unlikely that he will ever be released. There is still a long memory and a lot of victims. Former Congressman DeFazio told The New Yorker in 2023, "I mean, that guy should never see the light of day." Kinkle is incarcerated at the Oregon State Correctional Institution in Salem. He received his GED while serving a portion of his life sentence at McLaren Youth Correctional Facility in Woodburn. On June 11, 2007, Kinkle, nearing his 25th birthday, the maximum age to be held as a juvenile in Oregon, was transferred from the Oregon Youth Authority McLaren Correctional Facility to the Oregon State Correctional Institution, where he currently resides with Oregon Department of Corrections, SID number 129756669. I always include that because some people want to look it up. That's it. Anthony W. Case was shot 4 times by Kinkle as he took shelter underneath the table. The injuries were severe enough that he was unable to walk for an extended period afterwards and did not return to school until the next year. At Kinkle's sentencing, he said the pain was still enough that he could not walk far without shoes. He still has a slight limp. Nerve damage in his legs led him to give up hopes of playing baseball in college. Instead, he devoted himself to science, earning a bachelor's degree in physics from the University of Oregon in nearby Eugene and a PhD in astronomy from Boston University. He worked at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, where he helped develop the Parker Solar Probe. the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and Hello Swarm. Case told the New Yorker that without the injuries, he might not have pursued his scientific studies as seriously. Quote, if I had been pushing more toward baseball, there's no way I would have been studying as much. End quote. Kinkle was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and takes antipsychotic medication for it daily. He works as an electrician and takes college classes in prison. Kinkle continues to reflect on and try to understand his actions. Quote, how could I have gotten to this point at 15 that all these things came together, where my humanity collapsed and I did this horrific thing to people I loved and to people I didn't know? End quote. There's no way his behavior was a choice, says his sister, who elaborates that she has never felt angry enough to forgive him since he was the only family member she had left after he killed their parents. I don't know. Personally, was my brother, I'd be pretty pissed at him. That's me. Being his sister has, she says, complicated some of her romantic relationships, I'm sure. When partners found out, Case resists the desire to explain his, but agrees that better mental health might have averted the shootings. If it came down to his opinion as to whether Kinkle should be released, he allowed, it would not be an easy decision, but it would not be a hard no. On September 24th to the 27th of 2024, a man in Eugene, Oregon, posted numerous threatening videos online, including one where he discussed becoming the next Kinkle. Not really, make better choices. He was arrested and the FBI found weapons in his house. On April 9th, 2025, this is literally my birthday. Okay, so this guy was sentenced to 5 years of probation on my birthday, but he threatened people. Do you see where I'm going with this? Like, we need stronger punishments because, like, if you're threatening, then there's a pretty good chance you would do, and we need stronger punishments for that. But he was arrested on April 21st for parole violation, so he really didn't make it that long before going back to parole violation. Also, this is an add-on because I know that if I'm following it and you guys like my videos or other true crime YouTubers, then you're probably following it too. The thing that hurt and killed Athena Strand, I had heard got his due in prison, and I don't think it's just going to be a one-time thing, and honestly, I am all for that. He was a sick person, and yeah, so I'll add little updates on as I find out more about that, but as of right now, I am under the understanding that he's not having a good time in prison. Good for him. Anyway, that's it for me today. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. As always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Be cautiously kind to others and make good choices. And I'll see y'all later. Bye!